Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think might be underseen, underrated, or underappreciated. I'm your host, Josh Hallam, and I'm joined, as ever, by my wonderful co-host and friend, Alice Oliver. You all right, Alice?
Friend. Look at that. Friend,
colleague,
co-host and friend, colleague,
associate,
my muse.
Yeah, yeah. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm very well, thank you, Josh. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, thank you. I'm excited. You know I'm excited, don't you?
Oh, I do know why
It's
you're
always the
excited.
same reason.
I'm also excited.
Yeah, always the same reason. We're joined by another wonderful guest. He's a podcaster amongst many things. He's from Hardcore Listing. Chris Glasson, how you doing? You okay?
Hey guys, yeah, I'm great. Yeah, really happy to be here. Nervous because I'm not normally the one being I'm normally the host.
Yeah.
And also it's about a subject I love as well. So I'm actually I've been on other podcasts. I'm like, it could be about anything. And I'm like, my heartbeat doesn't go up at all. But yeah, I've been looking forward to coming on this.
You feel like you're sort of coming into an exam on
exactly.
film.
Yeah. I'm going to be like criticised for my taste in film. And
Maybe. It does happen.
Yeah, probably,
it does
actually.
happen.
Yeah, let's get started with it.
No,
we always start with a completely random question. So I put that out to the listeners
sure.
as we always do. And I picked this one from Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. This is from John Loftus on Twitter, who is at Lofty Sounds. That's LOFTYSNDS. So sounds without the vowels and Lofty, which is his name. I like this one, actually. I'll come to you first, Alex, because I'm interested to know what you're going to say. If you had to live on only one food forever, what would it be?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do think about this very often. Usually go for avocado. Because you've got some healthy fats in there, some vitamins, and I just love the taste. The other one that does sometimes come up though is eggs as well. I just love eggs. Little
versatile.
balls of protein. Delightful, yeah. Omelets, scrambled, poached, whatever you want. Eggy bread, although you wouldn't have the bread, would you?
It should just be a bowl of egg.
Just be eggy. Egg. Yeah, I reckon avocado would be the one because I think I could stomach that forever as well. What about you?
Well, so what we've not said here is it one specific food? Like if you say crisps, do you have to say? Is it like
do you get away with that? Every flavour?
Yeah, like is it just every crisp? Because if in that case, it's cheese.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah,
but then also any food that is the only thing you eat you're gonna get bored of, aren't you?
Well,
you also won't have to eat cheese for that long, Josh.
No, exactly.
Because I reckon give it 10 years and you will absolutely be dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the dream,
you
isn't
get bored of it.
Cheese yourself to death. That's
so
the
if
dream,
it was going to be just one type of cheese, though, which one?
So if it's just like fucking Cathedral City, then no, it's bread. Then. Because at least bread. Eat a bit of bread, get gout, die. That's the
dream.
It is the dream. So yeah, if you say it's one type of food, then yeah, it'd probably be like bread or cheese or crisps or something. Not avocado. I'm not thinking about healthy fats, Alice. I'm thinking about what can I eat? Because I can just eat small amounts.
Think about your healthy fats. Okay, you got to think about them.
Got to think about your healthies.
What about you, Chris?
Right. So before this podcast, me and the missus were like, "Oh, we've got a little bit of time to kill." After dinner, which is really unhealthy, and then we were like, there's this thing on Netflix, and it was like it's something Blue Zone, and Molly was like, oh yeah, I've heard about this guy. The blue zones in the world are all about the people who live the longest, like the highest percentage of people who live beyond 100 years. And there's a place in Japan, going to massacre the name because I've only just started watching it, called Okinawa. So everyone's going to be like, that's really not how you pronounce that word. But I think it's something like 65 to 70% of their calorific intake comes via sweet potato. So I'm like, what? It would be crisps, but I'm going to go healthy.
You can make sweet potato.
And I'm going to say sweet potato. And maybe I've added a few extra years to your listeners' lives there.
So just sweet potato, live to be 150.
Absolutely, man. That's it.
That is interesting. Thank you for telling me that, because now I'm going to go mad on the sweet potatoes. 100%.
Sweet potato and avocado on toast or something like that.
Oh, beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Beautiful
sweet potato
stuff.
chips dipped in avocado.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, great.
I think avocado's a little bit overrated, Alice. It's fine. Do you know what I mean? It's there, isn't it?
I don't know. I just don't think so. Because when I was a kid, my mum just used to make the best guacamole ever. So from then, my love for avocados has been strong, but and you know, not to get all I did it first or whatever, but I was loving avocados in the 90s, right?
Wow.
In like Christmas 1995, my mum making the avocado dip. We didn't know it was guacamole, but it was obviously guacamole, but she just called it avocado dip. Delicious, beautiful.
I was literally just having chicken Kievs in the 90s. You were
also,
way before your time.
Also banging.
Yeah, just turkey dinosaurs for me, curly fries. I think, you know, there's one of the things my other half loves is, you know, those dips in the supermarket that you're supposed to put like breadsticks or crisps in that's like sour cream and Thousand Island. They are my food turn off. They're rank.
Right.
They all just taste like the back of the fridge.
They're not, they are a bit rank. If I'm feeling gross, then I'll go for it. Get like a massive bag of Doritos, get one of them and go to town. But no, it's not. You don't do that if you're trying to be kind to yourself. That's when you want to punish yourself for being bad. Definitely.
I always get a bit funny with that, like sharing dips. Like there's certain foods that I'm not good at sharing. Like I can't share a bowl. Like if a mate or my missus was eating a bowl of ice cream, they're like, "Oh, can you finish this mouthful?" I'd be like, "Absolutely not." Like my head can't. But if you said, "Do you want a sip of my pint?" I'd be fine. But there's something about like yogurty consistency stuff and people sharing it where my brain's just like, "No."
I get that. Yeah,
not doing it.
I understand you. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we'll move on to talking about this week's film then, which is The Crow from 1994. So if you've not seen it, then spoiler warnings for an almost 30-year-old film. Chris, you picked this one. So tell the people at home a little brief synopsis of what it's about. And then more importantly, why did you pick it? Is it underseen? Is it underrated? Do you just love it and want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So a quick synopsis. I'm going to do this from the start of the movie. So if you haven't seen it in 30 years... well, this is the beginning. So if you like how I read this, then it's for you. I'm not going to try and impersonate Rochelle Davis's husky whispered tones because I'm just a monotone Essex boy. But it opens with this. It says, people once believed that when someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. But sometimes something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it and a soul can't rest. Then sometimes, just sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back to put the wrong things right. So that's basically it's a revenge film. It's a revenge film. It's a dark fantasy, a goth's dream of a film. 1994, directed by Alex Proyas, who did things like Dark City, iRobot, Gods of Egypt. He's also done a load of music videos as well, and you kind of can see that in this film and vice versa.
Big time.
Yeah,
big time in this film.
Yeah, for sure. So that's it. There's a lot. It's got a few other notable cast members. Is Brandon Lee is the leading role. So that's Bruce Lee's son. For anyone who doesn't know, he plays Eric Draven. And basically, who else is in it? You've got Michael Wincott. He stars as the lead antagonist, really top dollar. Rochelle Davis, I said, who's Sarah, who's a young girl in it. Chief Albrecht is Ernie Hudson, who's seen in films like Ghostbusters. I love Ernie Hudson. Who else? And David Patrick Kelly as T-Bird. He was from like Warriors Come Out to Play. And Tony Todd, who was Candyman. So there's a few people that you might recognise from the 90s in there. Yeah. What do I think it's underrated, underseen? I mean, I would be lying if I said in the 90s this film was underseen. And it grossed big time. Like it did pretty well. I don't have the figures on that, but it was everywhere. Like everyone was sharing it. A lot of it was passed down from like all our older mates because I think I was about 14 when it came out, and they were like, "This is the bomb. Everyone watch it." But I feel like it's now underseen, and I think it's underseen because if you take any action hero from the 90s, right? If you said Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Willis, the list goes on, Van Damme, Seagal, whatever. They continue to make films, and unfortunately, in this is Brandon Lee passed away. He passed away during the shooting of this film. And so he, he never got a legacy beyond this. I thought it was an incredible film. And I think, he'd done a few films before that were mostly poorly rated. There was one called Showdown in Little Tokyo, which I flipping loved. But I was like 12 and I haven't watched it back. I imagine I wouldn't have the same opinion. But I think that would have springboarded him to like real superstardom. And as a result, we'd still be watching his films through the 2000s, 2010s, and people would be going back through his back catalogue. And unfortunately, that just didn't happen. It affected people like Rochelle Davis, who was the girl in itself. She was really young. And I mean, she could have been set for really good stardom there. She was like a grunge dream, really, as a girl. I think she would have done so well in that era for acting. And it, like, his death really messed her up. So she has come back to acting, but not for years. So it had a big impact, and I think that sucked. There's a little bit of a void there. I mean, Bruce Lee himself died during the making of a film as well. It's all a bit weird. I'm not going to get tinfoil hatty on here. It's funny, when my fascination with The Crow, I watched it so many times for about 10 years between, like, say 14 to 24, 25. Then I had it on VHS. Then when everything went to Blu-ray, I never bought it on Blu-ray. And so there's been like a massive period since I haven't watched it. And Josh, when you were saying, what do you want to pick? It was almost one of the first ones. And then you were like, because you haven't watched it. And I thought, I better watch it. And so I watched it last night and I was terrified it was going to be crap. Because I hadn't seen it for like 14 years. I was like, what if it's absolute dog shit? But I rewatched it. I didn't think that. There you go.
That happens to us all the time, and it does happen where we've changed our minds on stuff. Like both of us on more than one occasion have picked a film, come to do the episode, and gone, it's not as good as I thought it was.
But that makes for really good discussion as well.
Yeah,
and I do love it when that happens, and when you sort of when you go into something feeling so sure of it. And then you come out. But then the other times as well, what happens is you go into something and you think, oh, fuck, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be bad. I only liked it because I was a kid. And then you watch it and it really surprises you. And it's like, oh, actually, that really held up. So there's so many different ways it can go. But yeah, I'm glad you weren't disappointed that you didn't think it was crap.
It's relieved. I mean, you're right. And also I didn't find anything new in this film. It turns out all I realised was I knew the film word for word still, and it was beautiful and freaky because it triggers emotions that you'd forgot you'd had about a film. But I think with other films, Alice, sometimes you watch them as an adult and you're like, oh, there's way more content there that was just flying over my head as a child.
I think especially with a film like this as well, because obviously because of what happened to Brandon Lee, it's inevitably got that emotional baggage. It will always be associated with that event. So that for those listening at home, if you don't know what happened, so first of all, obviously it's quite a dark subject matter. So if you're not feeling in the headspace to listen to it, please come back and listen to it when you do feel in the headspace to listen to it. But essentially a stunt went wrong. Unfortunately, Brandon Lee then lost his life. It was quite similar to the Helena Hutchins case, which has been in the press recently, with a dummy cartridge, I think it was, or a fake round or something like that, basically going wrong. And unfortunately, the performer, lost their life. It's very, very sad. Like you say, Chris, it's obviously got echoes of the fact that his father passed away young and he passed away young. So if you wonder what that was, then that is what that was. But it is. So just to come back to what you said there, I hadn't seen it before. And it'd been. I have a list. I have a list of films that I want to pick for the podcast, and I have a list of films that I want to make sure I watch. And that's anything from films that are 100 years old to films that have just come out. And I've not had the time to watch them yet. And The Crow's been on there for ages because every time I love comic books and I love comic book films. And quite often I read about them, and the amount of times it's like such and such was influenced by The Crow, such and such. So for example, again, for those listening at home, Heath Ledger's makeup in The Dark Knight is influenced by Brandon Lee's makeup in The Crow.
Well,
so it's that sort of thing.
That's not surprising at all, is it? Wow.
Equally, it's not just comic books, because it's had a massive influence on films like The Matrix, and then all the films that came after The Matrix that were trying desperately hard to be The Matrix, but weren't The Matrix. So I hadn't seen it before. But Alice, had you? Because I have a feeling you might have seen it before, but then you've not seen anything. So
no, you're correct with that, Josh. I was a goth girl in 2004. So this film was very, very yes, exactly. So this film was very popular in my friend group. Do you remember in the days of MSN and that? Where a lot of the lads would have like quotes from the film as their MSN names and stuff. Yeah.
Deep.
So
deep stuff.
We were in with this film very much, but like you, Chris, I hadn't seen it in years and years, probably since I was, sort of youngish teenager. And again, I had some concerns as well of like, oh, is this going to be bad? My main concern, for some reason, was around Brandon Lee's performance. I was like, is it just going to be like super, super cheesy? Is this going to be like maybe a bit of a kind of Keanu Reeves sort of thing where it's like, oh, he's just a bit wooden and I'm not really feeling anything. But I was so pleasantly surprised. And he was brilliant, I thought, and a real highlight for it. And obviously there is a lot of weight behind it because of what happened, like you said. But ultimately, I was so relieved with how much I did enjoy it. And so it wasn't on my list for the podcast, but it was nearly on my list. So I've got my list of films that I'm definitely going to do. And then in the back of my mind, there's a list of films that I might do, but I couldn't really tell if it was underrated or underseen because I have seen the ratings, Joshua. I will let you know that, just so I'm not making any guesses at the end and pretending that I'm a genius. So I do know kind of what it got. And then I wasn't sure if it was underseen, but you said something earlier, Chris, about kind of how it did in the box office and stuff. And what I read was that it was like a bit of a slow burn. So it sort of didn't have that immediate success. But I think because of what happened, they kept releasing it for about 4 years after its initial release. And every time it sort of got a bit more momentum and the kind of hype around it got a little bit stronger. So I think financially ultimately it was a success. It just took it quite a while to get there. Yes. That I think that's it. Yeah. And now I think it's a bit of a cult classic as well. So it's definitely in the zeitgeist in that regard. But yeah, ultimately, I really enjoyed watching it and I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to, which I was pleased about. Yeah.
Because there were so many films to pick from. Like, it was probably boring. Josh asked me, what do you want to pick? And then I just gave him a diatribe. And he's probably like, just pick one, mate.
I've not finished reading it, Chris. It was massive. But no, I mean, just going back to what you said there, Alice. Remember when films were in the cinema for more than a week? That was good, wasn't it?
I know,
back in the day when people
times.
didn't just go, I'll watch it on streaming in 3 weeks or whatever. But anyway, so that's interesting. So I hadn't seen it before. Alice, you had, and obviously Chris, you picked it. So go on then, Alice. Having watched it again, then what did you obviously said it did live up to that memory. It did live up to that expectation. What did you reckon to it?
So I do really like how pretty much everything about this film is just so bleak and grim as hell, right? So the weather, the surroundings, the people, the plot, the aesthetic in a lot of places, like this world just feels like a bad place and only bad things happen here. And I like how the aesthetic of the buildings and the costumes and some of the props and that are a mix of like this classic gothic Hollywood sort of Hammer horror style, but then mixed in with like downtown Detroit. And I think these two things complement each other really well. I really like how intense the whole thing is. Like in every aspect of this film, it feels so intense. The visuals, the feelings, the sounds and the music, the unrelenting anger and vengeance that just emanates from Eric. But you do get like this odd moment of calm, but only when we're with, I felt with the officer Albrecht. So when you're around him, things feel quite pleasant. They're quite relaxed when he's on screen because he's a little bit more in control and he feels like a bit of a calming influence on the chaos around him. But it just sort of, when he is on screen, it kind of highlights just how intense and chaotic the rest of the film is. Technically, I feel like a lot of effort and attention to detail has gone into the camera work. So the camera feels like it's literally all over the place. Like it's low, it's high, there's close-ups, there's wides, it's panning, it's crabbing. The shot selection is so varied and it makes the action sequences feel really intense and really fast-paced. And I think it helps immerse you into the film in general. And it really does keep you engaged because there just isn't any opportunity for you to switch off from what you're seeing. And it also adds to the chaos and the mayhem of the film, which there is a lot of in this instance. So I think just the general feeling that I was getting from the screen from watching it was just quite poor. Like it just kept you were just focused on it, I feel. It held your attention so well, I thought.
It is a very intense film. I mean, the city in it really looks like the Upside Down or something, doesn't it? It looks like a hell. And it's interesting. I was trying to read why were so many films around the late 80s to mid 90s? There was quite a few films set in Detroit where the narrative was it's rough. It's a shithole. Like RoboCop was one. This was one. There's other ones as well. They don't come immediately to mind. And I was like, I couldn't find anything about why that was, but I do know that it eventually went bankrupt, didn't it, as a city? Detroit declared itself bankrupt as a city, but and I don't know if that is because of some sort of sociological issue, economic. Yeah. Obviously, it must have been economic because they went bankrupt. But yeah, I was interested to know why it is because, like they say in this, it looks like it does. It looks like a hellscape. It looks like he's escaped from heaven into hell.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. We talk about this because a few things. So it's not Detroit like how they've modelled it, but they portray it of it because they've tried to make it more gothic in a sense. So that's not exactly right, but it fits perfectly because of the story they're telling. But what is real is Devil's Night.
Yes,
Devil's Night is a thing, and so Devil's Night in this movie is a night around, I think it's Halloween, where criminals basically just set fires left, right, and centre across the city. And that actually is, I never knew that until recently. And it's like, oh, what? So like that was happening in Detroit. So Detroit has had its like some serious issues. Weirdly, Devil's Night ended with Angel's Night, which was the community deciding to try and turn it around and stop this mass sort of like crime wave and like arson event happening. But yes, so that all happened. But yeah, it's funny, Ace, because when I stuck it on last night, the very first thing I noticed was the set, because I'm watching it on I've got a couple of quid to throw about now. I've got a flat screen TV, and like I like the set is clearly a model, and I was like, I never knew that. Like that never once made me. I never once registered that as like a teen that was a model cityscape that you were seeing. It was only on my TV. I was like, shit. Like, and immediately I was like, oh no, is this going to be really bad? But
you need to get a shit a telly, Chris. Otherwise, you'll never be able to enjoy this film again.
I could, I could just put one of my mum's old tights over the screen, and that will sort of like soften it, won't it?
Yeah, and that's what the filmmakers, that's their vision for how you should watch it.
Exactly.
With a tight stretched over the telly.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what about you, Chris, then? Obviously, you've got loads to say about this, so hit us with it. What do you like about The Crow?
I was making notes last night, but I was making notes in the dark, so I was hoping that I could still even read it now. I think like just... things like camera work that you mentioned, Alice, like how varied it is and how creatively it's shot. I think combined with the palette of the lighting and like the semiotics of that lighting, it's dark, it's black, it's red, it's white, and a lot of those themes come through. Like the creativity of using POV for shooting it, I think is really good. And then I think just coming around to this whole feeling that, like, because I was keeping track of the timing. Because I was like, it's an hour and 40. I was like, I never remember this film dragging. I wonder if at any point I'm like, what's going on here? And 16 minutes in, you get your first revenge killing. And I'm like, so you've had entire setup of this character who's effectively really a superhero.
But it's based on a comic book, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we can dive into that as a little afterword, but like it's like boom. At 16 minutes in, you're absolutely rolling, and the rest of the film, there's no fat in the script. Like the fact that I can remember every single line. Granted, I watched it a lot. I did watch it a lot, but like the fact every time, like I didn't. Every line kind of resounded. It had a meaning. It didn't have to always be deep. It has its sort of like its philosophies behind it, but every line was just like that's really well executed, and that's the same as the plot. The plot just flies along, and again, the characters, even some of those characters aren't in it for particularly very long, like Tintin, Fun Boy. But when you actually break down everything they say, every way that they behave, it absolutely serves the plot. It absolutely serves the nature of the character. The bad guys in it are world-class turds. I've nicked that from Steve Buscemi and Desperado. But they're all turds. And, you know, very quickly you want them all dead, effectively. And it doesn't take you long to be behind Brandon Lee and The Crow or Eric Draven being like, come on, let's straighten these arseholes out. Because what they do is obviously unforgivable. It's awful. They show just enough for that to make you feel uncomfortable without having to be particularly that explicit with it, with the travesty. And Brandon Lee's performance again, Alice, I was a little bit like, how's this gonna pan out now? And how do you play someone that's come back from the dead and who doesn't really understand that, and also do it without them having to have like 40 minutes of exposition or a training montage that you get in most like Marvel films now. So I loved that about it as well. I thought it flipped through. I didn't even realise your observation there, Alice, about like the calm parts with Albert. You're absolutely right. And that makes perfect sense. It's so strange. I never really noticed that, but they are really the only calming moments in the film. And I guess they are to help ground like Eric Draven to sort of like not be lose his absolute mind. There was supposed to be a guy in it called the Skull Cowboy, who was played by his name slips my mind.
Michael Berryman, is it?
That's it, Michael Berryman.
Yeah,
from Hills of Eyes. And they cut it all out, and I think it makes sense for them to do that. But he would have also been a sort of like grounding element to The Crow, but also he sort of. I think there was probably a different ending because I don't know. Do you ruin the ending for people? Effectively, because Brandon Lee couldn't do any further films, and they decided to sign him for 2 more. There was a different way that it could have ended, and the Skull Cowboy was very much going to explain why these films are basically going to continue. And obviously that didn't happen, so they took a different direction, which is perfect. It was really good. It worked. But yeah, so I think those grounding elements as well, like they're really necessary. It's just it's mad. I really like that observation. So yeah, they're my initial thoughts of it. I love the characters. I think they're all so clearly defined. Even within the bad guys, I think they've all got a different flavour of being a prick. Yeah. So
it was
that's
one of the, just to touch on what you said there, it was one of the things I really noticed about it, which is this film does a lot of, and we talk about this quite a lot on here, which is a lot of show, don't tell. You don't need to keep telling me about what's happened. They show you a glimpse, you get a good idea of what they've done to Shelley and Eric. That's all you need to know, and bam, that you are where you are with the story. But what I really like about it is it sort of combines the two things. So they show you everything, so they don't have you, like you say, him learning his powers and learning his this and doing that, and it's just these are the villains, this is what he's doing, and this is it. But also at the same time, because they do that, you go on the journey with the Crow, with Brandon Lee's character. And what I really like about Brandon Lee's performance in that bit is when it starts, he's quite frantic because he doesn't know what's going on. And then the more he gets into the guys going after them and killing them, the more he seems to actually enjoy what he's doing. And then at one point, there's a really good moment with Ernie Hudson's character, which you've touched on there, where he tells him what happened to him. He sort of goes, I need you to tell me what happened to me. And you realise then, oh, wow, he doesn't actually... He knows he was killed. And he knows Shelley was killed, but he doesn't know all of it. He just knows. He's obviously just driven by this almost instinctual feeling for revenge or whatever it is. And I really I thought it was a really good example of how to do a comic book film that both worked as a comic book film in the way that it looked, but also the way you would read a comic book. So you could see some of the images were like panels of a comic book, where characters have realizations and characters move the narrative along by their actions, because when you're reading a comic book, you have that God's eye view, don't you, of the world, where you are looking at the world, you're looking at the characters, and they're going through what they're going through. It's very similar to watching a film, but obviously it's a little bit different because you're sort of slightly more removed from it or whatever. But no, I really enjoyed that, and I love that idea of as he goes along, at first he's like, oh my God, what's going on? I was dead and now I'm not. And then as it goes along, he's like, actually, I'm enjoying like sort of doing flips and stuff. Stuff like that.
Yeah, there's no justification really for why. I mean, he was a rock star. Well, he was in a band. I mean, you're not given that much of a clue on how big the band got, but then he's like lighting people up with some wicked kung fu and shooting skills. But it's like I think what makes a good film is one where the setup means it doesn't need too much explaining. He's another world. He's a supernatural force now. I mean, he self-heals, so what else can he do? He can disappear almost at will. And so never at one point was like, hold on, that doesn't. Why is he allowed to do that? What are the mechanics of the universe? But like any good, I mean, like you say, Josh, like you study like show and tell, and I've written a few scripts now. I've read a few books on it. I'm by no means an expert, but the more films you watch, you guys are fanatical. As you get older, you kind of really kind of start understanding that the act structure and what payoffs mean. And I think it's all just so well done in The Crow. You don't need loads of explaining. They set it up very quickly, so you know what you're kind of expecting. So yeah, it's good. I made a few other notes as well. I do think at its heart, it's just a comedy. Now I'm going to be weird because I think Bone Tomahawk at its heart is a comedy. I watch Bone Tomahawk and I find myself laughing more than anything else. And in this rewatch of The Crow, and I think it's savage and unrelenting, but the humour in it is consistently there if you want to look for it. And there's like even things where T-Bird. So we are massacring. It's 30 years old, guys. So if you haven't watched it, but like T-Bird gets like jumped by the Crow, and he's in the back of his car making T-Bird drive quickly, and it really feels. It's quite. I feel got anxiety watching it because it's narrow roads, fast, and it's raining, and he's doing like a ton through these streets in the pitch black. And so you got this anxiety, but then they go past the cops, and then the cops pull away. And one of the cops has just got himself a hot coffee and he's literally pouring it on himself. And I'm sat there cracking up and I'm like, it's a really stressful scene. But there's constantly, like, there's loads of comedy. Like everything Fun Boy says, who's one of the criminals, is actually really funny. Although he's detestable, he's a horrible piece of shit, right? Who's, getting people's mums strung out on morphine. And he's actually he's very funny in some of the things he says, like somebody already bought me dinner, the police, when he's like mimicking like the little girl. And so you have there's lots of funny moments even within the darkness. Like straight after that T-Bird scene when they're going down he parks up at a pier and T-Bird just goes into this like sort of recital of aspects of the Bible about the devil, and he really like a lot of the time with comic books, you kind of like, they must all know they're in a comic book film, right? It's absolutely ridiculous what's happening. But T-Bird simply says, you can't come back. This is the really real world. And he says it so believably that you kind of like, it does feel like it could just be the one time where the paranormal actually happened. So it's really, really good acting performances there as well.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. So obviously Brandon Lee was great. I just to touch on what you said as well, Alice. I think Ernie Hudson is the emotional heart of this film. It's like if he's not in it, if that character's not in it, it's a sort of it's like a long music video.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but without Ernie Hudson's character and Rochelle Davis's character as well, without that relationship driving the story forward, I'm not sure it's anywhere near as good as it. And obviously that's a lot of that's down to the script, but a lot of it's down to he's just so likable. Whatever he's in, whether it's Ghostbusters, this, Miss Congeniality, whatever it is, he's just very, very watchable. He's very, very likable. So I thought that was good. Little shout out as well, totally. Michael Wincott, one of the best voices in cinema.
Absolutely.
It's only got better with age as well, so it's good. If you think it's good in this, if you've not seen Nope, my God, the man is basically Tom Waits. He's just growling through it. It's just brilliant. It's brilliant. He's got an amazing voice, and he's very good in it. He's a very good screen presence. Considering I've not seen him in loads apart from this Nope, and he is actually in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
He plays the guy of Gisborne in that. So, but anyway, what else for you, Alice?
He did Alien Resurrection, but they're literally the only ones I can think of. And he is like, I think his performance is top dollar. Again, he's like, it's everything he does is quite funny and also awful. I was going to say I would say he's up there with my favourite top villains. Like him and Clarence Bodiger from RoboCop are probably both in my top 5 as pieces of shit who are just incredible antagonists. Yeah, he's great. His voice is just made for a bad guy's voice, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's those characters, isn't it? It's those characters who are just unashamedly evil. Like they don't do, they've got no redeeming qualities. They're not.
None.
And there's also, I think there's something to be said as well for a villain that is completely without complexity.
Yeah.
They're just there and you're just there to be horrible. They're just the fucking Daleks or Darth Vader. I suppose Darth Vader's got complexity, but you know what I mean? They're just there to be hated. At no point does he do anything. Because even at the beginning, when he's first seen, has he not got a bit of a tear in his eye?
Yeah.
And his girlfriend slash half sister says to him, "Oh, you
my
thinking
father's
about
daughter?"
Yeah, you're thinking about what you've done." And he's like, "Yeah." And then I was like, "All right, maybe he's like sort of like one of these. He's regretful of his actions." Nope. just horrible. But anyway,
he just says something super dark. He's looking at a snow globe that his dad got him, and in the globe is a graveyard. And he's like, "My dad gave me this on my 5th birthday and said, you become an adult the day you know you're going to die." So thanks for the present, Dad. I mean, no wonder he's absolutely twisted as a human being. But he's unashamedly like just wicked. And there's like that in itself serves like loads of opportunities for him to get. I mean, that must be so fun to be able to play that sort of character where it's like just off the breaks, just be as horrible.
Scenery
as you
chewing,
want.
innit? Proper scenery chewing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what about you? Anything else from you, Alice? Anything else you particularly like about it?
So we've definitely covered most of it, to be honest. But just to finish on the like section, and you have already mentioned it, but I hadn't at all considered the similarities between him and the Joker. Obviously, in particular, Heath Ledger's Joker, but then also a little bit Joaquin Phoenix's as well in the Joker. But obviously, we've got the obvious in terms of the aesthetic because of the makeup and the hair. But even the way that he was speaking and the language that he chose to use and some of his body language and the way he would move around the scene really reminded me of Heath Ledger.
He's quite manic, isn't he, in places?
Joker. Yeah.
And the makeup really makes the eyes pop. So all you have to do is move your eyes a little bit, and it really, really pops.
Yeah, his facial expressions are amazing in it. They really are.
Okay, so we'll move on then to talking about things that we perhaps didn't like about it or that we would change about it or anything. I always say this, I don't get the impression there's going to be loads here, but you never know. Alice, is there anything you'd change about it? More big leather coats.
More men with long hair. That's what I want to see.
More pale men with long hair.
Yeah, and clown makeup. Love it. So there are two things, and one of these things is actually going to contradict something that Chris said earlier. So I'll save that for a second.
But
the first one is, so near the beginning, a piece of text appears on screen that says October 30th, Devil's Night, right? But there's no apostrophe in the word devils. And then later on, when there's a news bulletin on the television, it has the words Devil's Night on it, and there is an apostrophe in the word devils.
That is so attention to detail there, Alice.
Which is it? Which is it? Is it the Devil's Night, or is it the
Does
night
it belong
of
to the
devils?
devils or not?
Lots of devils.
This got me asking questions. I even went back to the beginning after I'd finished it, just got to make sure that that's actually right. Otherwise, I just sound like a fucking arsehole. But there was no apostrophe.
It's Mischief Night here, right?
That's
what I know it as.
So,
yeah, Mischief, or like if you're up north, Mizzy Night, because obviously why
Mizzy.
Mischief is such a hard word to pronounce. You have to break it. Have you ever heard of that, Alice?
I've heard of Mischief Night, but not
it's
Mizzy
not. It's
Night.
not setting fires. It's
Night.
setting fireworks
eggs,
off.
right?
Eggs.
It's eggs.
We used to call it ghost busting in Essex.
Oh right, is that what you just
really?
saw?
Yeah, we just would go around on Halloween just being little toe rags, basically.
Just annoying adults. What was the second thing then, Alice? What's dessert?
So the dessert for me was, as much as I did enjoy it, I do think that it was a little bit long for what it is. So the thing is, my justification for this is that the film itself is very one note. So there is only one thing going on. It's Eric and he's getting revenge. And that is it. That is all that's happening.
Yeah.
And I think because a lot of it is so intense and so loud and chaotic, you do feel a little bit exhausted when you get to about halfway or 3/4 of the way through. So I feel like you could have maybe dropped 10 minutes, not like a particular section or a particular chunk of it, but some bits I think just lasted maybe a moment too long. Like when he is killing the the people that he's getting revenge on and stuff like that, or when they're having conversations with each other and Eric isn't there. Some of that I thought, well, you could drop a minute or two there and I wouldn't really lose kind of the idea and the vibe that you're going for. So it was just that, and that's obviously down to personal taste or whatever, but it got to the end and I was a bit like, whew, do you know what I mean? Because it's a bit of an emotional battering, really.
It's quite intense as well, I suppose.
It is, very much so.
For the whole soundtrack, the very last song is like how it ends is so calm because the rest of the soundtrack is obviously quite anxious. It's banging. I love that soundtrack. That's weirdly my favourite Cure song is Burn. And I mean, who's ever saying that? Probably no one. But it's mine because of this film. And if you don't like it, fuck you. But it is quite an aggressive. It is quite aggressive. So like they've ended it with, right, okay, this is your sort of like Xanax now. Let's calm everyone down because that was really stressful. And like even though I do think it blisters through, I couldn't remember the runtime, and that's why it was two reasons I was cognizant of that last night was to how quickly is this going to get going compared to modern day films, and also I've put this on a bit late, and I'm 42, and I get tired, and so I was like, how long is it going to be? Am I going to be up past midnight tonight? And an hour and 40 didn't put me past midnight, but I was sailing close to it. And I was just like, oh, fuck's sake. So I did go 140. I was like, I didn't think it was that long. So I kind of see what you mean with that. Like, it's a difficult one, that, because I don't think they were with the other characters for that long, like the bad guys. I wonder if you edited that stuff out, I would still have the same opinion I do for the bad guys. Like, for example, there's a scene where they're all sat in the bar, they're swallowing bullets, and they're shouting, fire it up. And fire it up is something I would say in my teens, like when we were out drinking. Like there's so many things, like how I have my hot dog, all shit like this. I've always wanted a white cat called Gabriel. There's loads of stuff in here that I carried with me for years. And only till watching it last night, I was like, that's from The Crow. I mean, I've never swallowed bullets, to be fair.
Oh,
I wonder, I'm just not that cool. But like, I wonder if taking things like that away would then make me not enjoy his. Because I think with any revenge thing, it's got to be cathartic, right? So you've got to want those people dead, and you can only want them dead if you see at least enough of them. But it's a really good observation. I think, like, you know, it is 1 hour 40 for just the revenge. I don't know how long movies like so obviously films like Old Boy, Lady Vengeance is one of my favourite films of all time, might be top 5. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. I don't know if all of those are. I don't know how long they run for. I don't remember them being particularly fast films, but I think there was more to them as well. It wasn't just doing backflips and shooting and throwing knives. So maybe there's a good reason for that.
You know, they've been trying to remake this for about 10 years now.
Oh, yeah,
we're now on our third or fourth actor who's going to be the Crow. It was Jason Momoa, then it was Luke Evans. I've heard other things. It's now currently Bill Skarsgård, who is Pennywise, the most recent Pennywise. So we'll see if it gets made. If it does get made, Alice, guaranteed 2.5 hours this.
Oh, absolutely.
2.5 hours. There's a bit where he learns all his powers. Probably a post credit scene where he gets invited to join the Crow Vengers.
He won't die for a fucking hour.
He won't die. At least
him.
At least half an hour will be him meeting Shelley, meeting Shelley's parents, getting engaged.
Nervous about posing the question. A whole like good segment on planning the wedding. And the for sure. Well, weirdly, because I did read that recently, their plans are for it to be more true to the comic,
right?
And there's differences. Like Top Dollar actually isn't the main antagonist in it, for example, and it's a bit more padded out. So you are definitely staring down the barrel of a 2.5 hour film. And like, so I don't know if I'm never someone who says don't make a remake. I'm not that guy, but I'm also like, you can have a go, but you might ruin my fucking childhood with it, or you don't, because I kind of just forget about it. It's not in my head canon. I just pretend it doesn't exist. But there's a good chance I won't enjoy it as much if it's that long.
It's a weird, in my personal opinion, it's a weird decision to want to remake it. I don't really get it. It's like trying to remake The Matrix. Like, I I don't know what
that'll
anyone's
happen. Don't
going to
worry
get
about
out
that.
of it. Like, I just...
Well, money, but
Yeah.
other than
Oh,
that-
sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
Duh, it's always the answer. It's always the answer.
But you're right,
what
Alice, there's
about-
no real, I don't know. I love Bill Skarsgård. Like the Skarsgårds, we did it on our podcast, top 5 families you want to be a part of. And Skarsgårds were my number one. Like, holy cow, that family is just an incredible tour de force of talented people. And so if I'm happy seeing anyone do it, I'm cool with Bill having a go at it. I really am. But will it happen? Will it be like, it's not going to be the dirge that came out after The Crow? Because there was a bunch of sequels. I ended up watching City of Crows only probably 10 years ago because I knew it was going to be crap. And it really is. You can't lower your expectations enough for that film to be good. Even with Iggy Pop in it, it's just well, no, that's a bad casting choice anyway. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe leave it. You ain't gonna be Brandon Lee.
Is there anything for you, Chris, that you don't like having watched it again, or is it just a solid goal, whatever for you?
I mean, I like all like I usually like not using CGI in stuff. And I don't think this film really needs it. The model city did kind of stand out to me at the front. That's picking really holes in it. I think, unfortunately, I am so prejudiced. I almost can't give a rational critique of it because I think it's just Pip bought me this Crow T-shirt not that long ago. It's got it's Sheryl Crow. And it's got a merging of Sheryl Crow's words mixed in with the Crow's, some of the Crow's sayings on the back. It's difficult for me to really pull that many holes in it. I think it just does what it says it's going to do on the tin. It comes from a simpler time, and I wonder whether or not they're just scared of writing films that simply now. I don't know. How about yourself, Josh? Please, someone tear it a new arsehole.
I've got 2 points.
Cool.
One is that for me, it was just a little bit too physically dark at times. It was just the odd occasion was like, I can't tell what's going on.
Yeah.
And it might be because I haven't got a massive telly and I had a tight over it. But no, I just couldn't tell. And the second one is I found Top Dollar's hair really distracting.
It is.
I was watching
really
it going,
is.
he doesn't strike me as a guy who's like, long straight hair. That's what I'm going to go for.
Like it's immaculately pruned, and he's like
so
the bad
it's
guy.
Conditioned. It's beautiful. It looks like a horse's mane, and he just doesn't strike me as the type who would have it. I just can't imagine a man looking at himself in the mirror who's that intense and being like, "Yeah."
It's so true.
Hair that needs maintenance for me. That's what it is.
He's like, I started the first fires in this city. I've also got the best hair, but the thing is. Would you tell him?
No, not to his face.
You're not gonna,
Yeah.
because the only person in the film who does is Gideon, and Gideon's got a big set of balls how he talks to Top Dollar, but it don't work out for poor Gideon. So he's probably like that guy, that famous person who is surrounded by yes men. And no one's saying, I think your hair's getting a little... Because he also dresses quite like Victorian, doesn't he? He's properly got like... All the other guys are like hooded gangsters, very much of the 90s. And then you've got him dressed like 200 years in the past. If you break down his outfit, he's wearing riding boots. It's really weird, Josh, you say that, because I was staring at the parting in his hair last night in one of the scenes and constantly going, what sort of trousers is he wearing? Because they don't look like, where
There's a lot
would you
going
have
on,
put
isn't
them?
it? Are you all right, Top Dollar? Are you...
At the same time, I absolutely don't believe anyone was telling him shit because he was quite villainous. It's a really good observation, though, Josh, that, yeah.
Okay then, so we'll move on to talking about the critical reception and the box office then, and we'll see if we can decide, is it underrated, is it underseen, is it whatever. So Alice, you've seen the critical reception then, so do you have any idea how it did at the box office, or do you not know?
I have got a vague idea because I did have a look at that.
Okay.
And from what I gathered, it definitely got its budget. I didn't cheat. It's because this one was all going to go on my list anyway, so I'd already looked it up. But from what I gathered, it wasn't immediately financially successful, but then it did become financially successful. And I do think made its budget back quite easily, is my understanding of it. But it was a while ago that I looked at that.
Okay. Chris, have you any idea how it did critically or commercially or anything?
I mean, only when you then the other day reminded me, is it underseen or underrated? I was like, oh shit, I've got carried away just forgetting how much
I've got to pick
film.
one.
So
then
I went and looked on IMDb and just looked at the basic score across IMDb. But I didn't go to Rotten Tomatoes or anything like that. And he got 7.5. So I mean, I can't exactly say it's underrated. Like a 7.5 is a solid banger, especially for an action film. So, you know, I'd be lying if I was saying I think this should definitely be an 8 at least. That's ridiculous. I think from that, I think it was probably reason that it was pretty well reviewed. I don't know, Josh, what else have you found, mate?
So, at the time of recording, as you've just said there, it got 7.5 on IMDb. Over on Rotten Tomatoes, it's a little bit kinder, actually. The critics give it 84%. Which is really high for the critics.
That's really high for something like this, yeah.
And the audience give it 90%.
Oh, there you go.
So if you work out the average, it's about 83% or 8.3 out of 10. So
that's good.
That's the critical reception. Would we say that's fair?
Yeah, I can be unhappy about that. I do think the fan score is just commensurate with, you know, Alice and me saying everyone was watching it and, you know, everyone's got fond memories of it, but it is stuck there. You know, I remember probably about 8 years ago before meeting my fiance, just making that clear, Molly, she's downstairs. But I was on a dating app and I mentioned The Crow. And the girl was like, "Oh my god, that's really old." And I just thought, "Oh god, I'm so
really old."
She's like, "That's from the 90s." I was like, "Yeah."
There's barely any CGI in it.
So it has well and truly been forgotten by younger generations, I feel.
Well, I think that's a good point, actually, because just to touch on the critical reception there, often what you see with cult films is that the audience score is sky high because the only people who go on and vote for it are the people who love it. So I think that's something that's worth noting. So in terms of box office then, it did make 93 million worldwide, and like we've already touched on, was called like a cult hit. But I think for me, I'm going to say that this is underseen because I don't think people are seeking this out now, and I think it's worth it because you can definitely look at lots of stuff that came after it and go, oh yeah, that's how it influenced X, Y, and Z. So I think it is underseen. What would you say, Chris?
Yeah, that was my whole campaign would be underseen. Yeah, 100%. Like you can't really say any of the others, but certainly underseen. It's now a bit of a gem, and I think that cult following. How long does that last until it's only going to shrink further and further? And because of obviously Brandon Lee's unfortunate passing. So yeah.
Well, would you agree, Alice? Are we saying this is appropriately rated and underseen?
Yeah, certainly. I can definitely get on board with that.
Well, there we go. Another one it's appropriately rated but underseen, and that's why you picked it, Chris. So that's a win. So tell the guys at home then. A little bit more about where can they find your stuff? What have you got going on? Where can they seek you out?
Yeah, so you guys, we were lucky enough to have you guys on our podcast. I had that
fun.
With Stewie Whiffen. Hardcore Listing, where we run down top fives. We sometimes have guests. Sometimes it's just me and my matey Stuart Whiffen just being horrible to each other over the discussion of a top five. It'd be lovely to have you guys back on. I'm sure you can pick another one. I mean, I never get bored of discussing film, especially with you guys. It's really fun. Predominantly Hardcore Listing is where you can normally find me. At Hardcore Listing is really all you need to type into Instagram, and you'll see my my bearded face.
Oh, there you go. And it's just wherever you get podcasts, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Acast, Spotify, iTunes,
all the usuals.
It's all over the shop.
Well, we'll obviously put it out when this comes out, and we'll also make sure we'll put episode links in the episode description as well. So make sure you check that out. Do give Hardcore Listing a listen. It's well worth a listen because there's a lot of podcasts that are quite specific, but what's really good about Hardcore Listing is that you can find a topic that suits you. If you like music, there's food, there's film, there's loads of stuff. So it is definitely worth a listen. So check it out. We were on it. Hopefully we'll be on it again. What did we do? Top 5 films we wish we'd been at opening night for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. We'll try and get on again. Chris Glasson, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Well, there we go. Another guest episode in the bag. The Crow, then appropriately rated, but underseen. I tell you what, it's well worth the watch. If you like your comic book films, if you want to know what influenced a lot of other comic book films and films that came after it, it's definitely worth a watch. It's very good. Or if you like dark gothic things as well, it's definitely going to be up your street, as it was Alice's when she was a teenager, and a bit still now. Anyway, we'll be back next week with another episode in your ears. If you'd like to get in touch with us in the meantime, the email address is filmsandthat@gmail.com. You can find us on all the social medias. If you just search for us, when we will be there. We are on Patreon as well, so if you fancy getting some bonus stuff, access to episodes a day or two early, extended episodes as well, heading over to patreon.com/justfilmsandthat, and you'll find us. We're also on the television as well, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. Every Friday from 6 p.m. you can find us on the local TV network. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. I've also been uploading all the videos to Dailymotion, so if you head on over there and type in Just Films and That, you'll be able to find us talking about all our favourite underrated and underseen films.
Yes, indeed. Lots of ways to hear us, see us, engage us, and all that stuff. Thank you very much to Chris for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. Make sure you check out the links in the episode description for all of his stuff, and we'll see you next week. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio!
Bye!